In this video, I'm going to show you 5 more teams that should be added to Kill Team. These are all viewer suggested. I made a video talking about the teams I thought should be added, and got a ton of comments with great recommendations, so this is some of those. Let's get right into the video with the first team, and that will be the Zoats. These are the crazy reptile centaur looking creatures. They have a weird backstory where they were used by the Tyranids as diplomats to scout out worlds. But then they vanished for a long time, and now they've shown back up and aren't controlled by the Tyranids anymore. There's actually a Zoat in 40k that has a decent pistol and a strong melee profile, so we also have a model to see what these would look like. I would think a kill team of these guys would be on the small side as far as numbers go. They're supposed to be really strong in melee combat because of their physical strength, so I think that's where they would really shine, not so much on range attacks. And because they're like a centaur, they're fast and they have a deadly charge. So I think having some extra movement and having a buff to damage when they charge a target would give them some more personality in game. Having a few tanky, fast, charging models would make for a really fun kill team. Next up we have the Zoats, who are the space dwarves. Just like a dwarf in any fantasy game, the Zoats are short, stout humanoids. There's been a lot of back and forth by Games Workshop on if the Zoats are officially in the 40k universe or not. One story is that the reason you almost never hear of them and why their rules were taken out of the game is because the species were entirely taken out by a Tyranid invasion. But Games Workshop has also said they simply weren't in the lore anymore, so they just weren't canon. I think the official stance right now is the Tyranid attack one, and that the few that survive mostly serve in the Imperial Guard. This bit of lore is just from reading wikis and the forums while doing research for this video, so if any of you know the full story, let me know down in the comments. I'd be interested to hear what the official canon is right now. There's a lot of debate back and forth on if they're canon or not, so I'd be interested to hear what the actual truth is. One side note that I thought was interesting, apparently if Zoats are canon, a lot of them fought with Chaos in the Horus Heresy, so there may actually be Chaos dwarves. Seeing some crazy skull-covered evil space dwarves would be really funny. For gameplay, I could see them being similar to Imperial Guard profiles, but having more wounds, stronger melee, but only a 4-inch move. Another team I want to talk about that was recommended by a viewer was introducing the Adeptus Arbites, which are basically the police force in the Imperium of Man. But they don't really deal with small crime. They're focused more on the crime and uprising that would threaten planets or go against Imperial law. They're very well trained and actually have a pretty solid selection of war gear. One thing I really want to see are their cyber mastiffs, which is exactly what it sounds like, a mechanical dog that's produced by the Adeptus Mechanicus. These can either be completely mechanical or they can be a cyborg where they're a hybrid organic and mechanical. They actually have models in Necromunda and they look pretty good. If the crew can have hounds, I think these guys can too. Their most popular weapons are their melee shock mauls, which would likely have the stun keyword. It's basically what it sounds like. It's a mace that has an electrical pulse through it. And for range, they typically have bolters and shotguns that use the executioner round, which means they're basically homing rounds. This would probably be an equipment piece that you can give them that increases their ballistic skill. Another iconic piece for these guys are the shields that are basically riot shields, but this is in the Warhammer universe, so they have a weird twist. These shields actually have a shock plate in the middle of them, so if the user strikes with it, they will send an electric pulse from the shield to stun and damage the target. I think a kill team of these guys wouldn't be as damaging as a lot of the others, but with their high amount of stun as well as having the shields, I think they could have a lot of crowd control to make up for the difference in power, so they could be good for securing primary objectives or attack ops. Next up we have the Noise Marines. These are the heavy metal Chaos Space Marines that use sound waves as their weapons. To me, this is one of those teams that wouldn't just be unique, but the way they would play would actually make them completely change the meta. In 40k, their gimmick is to ignore cover, and Kill Team is a game largely focused on training cover. This means you can't just slowly move up the board with a conceal order. You either stay out of line of sight, fight them, or you're just gonna get blasted by them. I like teams like this that completely change how you have to play when you're playing against them. I'm sure it'd be a nightmare to balance, though. I would love to see a kill team of Noise Marines painted like famous metal or rock bands. My first thought here was to paint them like Kiss. Seeing Gene Simmons come around the corner and blast a Space Marine to death would be fun to watch. And you could play some background music to match whatever band you paint them as. If we ever did this team, I'm 100% doing this. Finally, we have the Vespid. These are the insect-like creatures that are actually part of the Tau Empire. Before the Tau, they used advanced crystal-based technology, but they weren't developed enough to actually have spaceflight. So they were an entirely planet-bound species. As far as combat, which is what we really care about when we're bringing stuff into Kill Team, they have a couple of things that could be interesting. The first is their ability to fly. An actual flying-based team would really mess things up because they would be high mobility, and they would really be able to utilize vantage points or deny them from the enemy. They also have claws that are diamond hard and would give them a solid melee attack profile, as well as some crystal-based weapons. Their main ranged weapon is a neutron blaster. I'm not sure how strong these are or how they stack up to anything else in the 40k universe, but even if it was weak, they at least still have some kind of range profile. And if you want to copy their actual 40k rules, they could have an ability like the Genestealer Cult, where you can deploy them farther up on the board, or even have some kind of reserve mechanic. Well, that wraps up the 5 kill teams I wanted to cover here. I think these are all awesome ideas, and thank you so much to the viewers that left these comments. It's amazing how creative this community is, and I love seeing what everybody comes up with. I'd like to actually start homebrewing rules for some of these factions I've been covering. That might be a future video coming out in the next month or two. Thank you for watching.